Welcome to Jumpstart Your Joy. I'm your host, Paula Jenkins. I invite you to join me as we explore how inspiring people have chosen joy in their lives and what they have to share with us about how to jumpstart joy in the world. Plus, how do we follow our own hearts, find work that lights us up while mindfully noticing the role joy plays in our own journey. Welcome to episode 139. This is Paula Jenkins, the host of Jumpstart Your Joy. On today's show, I'm really excited to have Doña Bumgarner on as part of the Friendpreneur Series. Doña is a coach, a podcaster, a mom, and a project manager. So if you know me, you know that she and I have a ton in common. And this is just one of those amazing conversations where we talk shop on so many different levels. There's a lot about podcasting in this episode if you are interested in starting your own show. And there's a lot about the growth that happens as a mom and becoming a coach. I just know you're going to love Doña. Before we get to the show, first I want to say welcome. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us here. Jumpstart Your Joy is a weekly podcast that comes out on Tuesday mornings, and you can find it on any of the regular podcasting apps. I always publish show notes for each episode so you can follow along with the conversation and also get any of the links that we talk about. Doña and I share a couple of favorite books in this episode, and you can find them at jumpstartyourjoy.com/Doña, which is spelled D-O-N-A. While you're over on the website, you will also find another 138 other episodes all about joy and how to find joy in your life, along with the past episodes in the Friendpreneur Series, which include Christy Tending, Michelle Ward, Laura Heacock, to name a few. I'm also super excited to announce that this episode is being brought to you by my very own Podcasting Fundamentals class. It is a short series of emails that you can sign up for that will help you navigate starting your own podcast. When you start the series, you'll get my full list of recommended hardware and software that you'll need to start your own show, and then a couple of the mindset things that come up around starting your show and putting your voice out there in front of other people. I love working with people on this process, and I've put a lot of my heart and soul into this series. If you want to sign up for the Fundamentals course, it is free, and you can find it on the front page of jumpstartyourjoy.com. Just click on the big Podcasting Fundamentals banner on the front page. It'll be on the slider, and you'll get enrolled right away. Plus, I'm also going to start up my podcasting bootcamp, which will take you from an idea to your own show in just 8 weeks, and that'll start in the next couple of months. You'll be on the VIP list to be the first notified for when that comes out if you sign up for Podcasting Fundamentals. So I am so thrilled to have Doña on this week. We really do talk a whole lot about what comes up as project managers, how you can leverage your skill set in new ways, how it's sometimes so easy when you're starting a business and starting something new that you kind of push aside the things and the skills that come most easily and most naturally to you. And in our case, some of this is really that project management skill set, which is something that I toy with all the time. How can I bring this into the things that I offer clients? And so it's really a fascinating conversation from that standpoint. Maybe you, if you have your own business, have also found that you kind of push away the things that come easily for you when you could be rolling them into the business that you have. I think you'll find that this episode has so many actionable items in it that you're just going to want to take notes and really dive in later. So let's get on to the conversation with Doña Bumgarner.
You guys, welcome to the Friendpreneur Series. I am so excited to have Doña Bumgarner on. Oh my gosh, welcome.
Thank you, Paula. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I'm excited to have you. So I would love for you to explain. Well, why don't I first explain? So the Friendpreneur Series, if you guys are like, what is this? So I love once a month, I get to talk to somebody who is a friend of mine and also on the entrepreneur journey. And so I made up the word friendpreneur, and that's what this is all about.
It's a great word.
I know. I love it. It's fun to say. It's actually hard to say, which maybe I should have thought about before I named it. But so Doña and I know each other through coach training, and she has an amazing podcast called Nurturing Habit.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I love it. And I love how you've constructed your seasons as well. So would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do and who you work with?
Yeah. So I'm a coach. I'm a fairly new coach, like because we just met through this program not that long ago. For years I've been writing about motherhood and mindfulness and motherhood and sort of in that vein. And then I went to coach training, the CLCC program, and realized that that was really the piece that was missing from the work I wanted to do. So now I'm working as a coach. And, it's been an interesting journey, right? So I thought I would leave behind my mindfulness stuff and start something else entirely. And I experimented with that. And so this has been part of my journey, is just honing in on who I want to work with. So just recently, I have really gotten clear that the people I want most to work with are other creative entrepreneurs, creative and service entrepreneurs, so coaches and yoga teachers and artists and photographers, all those sorts of people who are moms and who are really struggling with that balance of trying to run a business and also be really present in their family and for their family. And there's this particular piece of, I don't know how specific it is to where I live, but certainly where I live in Northern California, there are a lot of women who left their careers in order to stay home with their kids, at least for a little while. And then they started something on the side and have had this weird sort of realization that, as much as they want to be at home with their kids, it's also really hard to be at home with your kids.
Yes.
And that this other thing is really feeding them and it's really important to them. But then how do you balance, especially when you made a really clear decision to leave a career, how do you balance a new career with the parenting that you gave up your other career for? So it's just a really interesting path. So that's who I'm working with now. And of course, all my mindfulness and parenting stuff, came right along for the ride.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and it's so I love that the kind of what the niche there, and not that these people are a niche, but that there is something so very interesting about that, the pull, because I've experienced it myself, is why I'm kind of diving in there, of yes, I want to stay home. I'll be honest, I just said that out loud. Yes, I would love to stay home, but then the reality of it is when I'm home, it's very apparent that I also need time for myself, and that it is stressful. It is demanding. It is a lot to be with one-on-one. I have one child, but with one kid, any one person probably all the time, and be their whole world. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's that piece, being the whole world to one person. But then I think for a lot of people, and for me especially, this was my journey too. Of course, I left a career. I was a program manager. I ran a team of project managers at Apple for over a decade. And then I left when I was pregnant. And so I was home with a baby alone.
Yes.
After working, a really high pressure, high intellect, high speed job. And I was frankly bored out of my mind. I loved being home with my baby. That was fantastic. But also, my partner would come home and I'd be like, tell me what you did today, because
I need an adult conversation.
I need to hear about the real world. What was hard in your life today? Can I problem solve for you?
Yeah.
So that piece of, really, and shortly after that, I started doing freelance writing. I tried on several different careers during this time. I started doing freelance writing, and then I started a blog, and I realized really quickly that stuff was really just a really important intellectual and mental outlet for me. And if I didn't do it, and I even had to hire childcare in order to do it, which was a really difficult path for me to walk. Here I am at home with my kid on purpose, and then I'm hiring a sitter to take care of her. But if I didn't do it, I was not a good mom. I had this weird balance I had to work out with how much do I feed myself so that I can feed her or be there for her.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I think that's there is a conflict there. I think it probably happens at different layers for all sorts, whatever you've decided to do as a parent or what you're able to do as a parent. work versus home, whatever that looks like. Like it's very conflicting because and it's really, what is it? It's super hard. I think there's something especially around having someone come in, or you're taking your kid to daycare, or like there's something really hard about handing off the care. Like,
Yeah.
I think maybe that's one of like the linchpins of it, of like, it's very hard for me to give this child to someone else. What do you think that is?
Well, there's so many things what that is.
Mm-hmm.
A big piece of it is, I think, cultural pressure. There's this idea that if you're the mom, you need to do everything. You have to be the good mom, the good parent, the perfect mom, super mom. We have lots of words for that role.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them are unsustainable.
Yes.
And then, especially for moms who left something in order to be the at-home parent, I think the idea of, well, I gave up something to do this, so I should be all in, and all in can look really actually overwhelming and also unsustainable, but we build this idea of what it means to be an at-home parent that doesn't actually fit for who we actually are as people. So yeah, the guilt comes up, like, well, I should be supermom. Supermom shouldn't need to do this. Supermom shouldn't need to, work to be sane. Supermom shouldn't ever feel like she needs to run away from her kids, or shouldn't need, just some quiet time. And then, there's the reality of what it's like to be at home with a child in our particular child raising culture. And, I've read a lot about written a lot about how child rearing has changed. And, our mother's generation, even if our mothers, like my mother was totally an attachment parent without, they didn't call it that then, they just called it parenting. But she didn't expect to entertain me all the time, where, I was home with my baby and I thought I needed to entertain her constantly. I didn't, but I thought I did. So we have this expectation of what parenting looks like and what good parenting looks like. And then there's, like attachment parenting, and there's all this really high touch parenting styles that require so much from both parents, really, but honestly, really the mother, that leave no space for anything else. So, my mom was an attachment parent, but also she was writing a book and running a store. She had a health food store when I was a kid. And, so yeah, we were with her, but she wasn't entertaining us the way that I thought I had to entertain my toddler.
Yes. Oh,
so the expectations are just different.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of the book, it's Overwhelmed by Bridget Schulte. I'm not sure if that's how she pronounces it, but it's not really a parenting book, but it kind of is. Have you read it?
I haven't read it. It's on my shelf, but
it's right here on my shelf. It is so good. I'll link up to it. But like, it really talks about, I think it's in the Danish countries, that it's a very different approach, that both the parents come together and say, how do we want our, it's life design, basically. It's like, how do we want this to look? But it's deeply encouraged as a culture, which we're not all really encouraged to do. So that one's a really good one. That one, it is really.
Yeah, I'm sure I picked it up because I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. And then, of course, I was overwhelmed. So I didn't read it yet. I haven't read it yet.
So true. Yeah. Well, and I love that it's sitting this is an ironic placement. It's sitting next to The 4-Hour Workweek on my bookshelf. I'm going to take a picture of that. And The War of Art. Those are some good titles. All you need.
Aspirational reading right there.
That's so funny. Yeah. Well, and do you want to talk about what is lighting you up or inspiring you right now as you're looking at working, I don't know, either in work or in life?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've got a few things going on. So I'm definitely feeling really inspired because this real clarity about who I wanted to work with has only come fairly recently. And honestly, I've struggled with this, like really trying to get clear on who I wanted to work with for months. So I'm feeling just really super inspired by having had it click, So that is really inspiring me. And then another piece of that puzzle for me was that, I mentioned that I used to work at Apple as a project manager, and I have in all of my work, any part of my work, from leaving Apple up to now, which has been almost 8 years, I have really stayed away from that project management piece. Like, I don't want to be a project manager. I don't want to go back to corporate work. I don't want to be, working in business. I don't want to be a consultant. Like, I just don't want to do it. But someone said to me recently, you have really valuable skills and you are throwing them under the bus. And I was like, that's an interesting way to look at it. Like, are there ways that I can use these skills that are not being a project manager, going back to corporate work, or, being a project management consultant in that way? And I realized that there actually are with the target market that I want to work with, which is that all these mama entrepreneurs, mamapreneurs, there's another word that's really hard to say, and often need more strategic support, like the stuff that comes super naturally to me, like how to manage your to-do list and how to set priorities and how to streamline your business and set up tools and, like all the things that make your work life easier so that you can have more time with your kids or your family or just not be working all the time.
Yep.
Like, that's super easy for me, and I can teach those skills and I don't have to be a project manager. So
Right?
Finally, like the light bulb went off, like, oh, I can use my skills in ways that are really, really helpful to other people. And then the piece of that I realized, and that I think is what's the really interesting, exciting part to me, is that part of my resistance to teaching time management is that so much of what we hear about time management is in the pursuit of doing more. So it's productivity, like you can work faster so you can get more done. You can work faster so you can get everything done. You can, it just makes me tired even saying it. So what I realized is that my goal in teaching productivity skills and helping moms run their businesses in a more efficient way is not so that they can do more. Of course they can if they want to, but my goal in that is so that they can do less, or that they can spend less time doing what they want to do so that they can do more of the other things they want to do that are feeling crunched. So for example, if you have, I have like 15 hours a week to work on my business because my really strong priority is to be available for my daughter when she's not at school. So my goal is to do as much in those 15 hours as I possibly can, because I don't want to expand those hours to more than that, right now in my life. So how much can I fit into 15 hours so that I can then stop and be totally present for my daughter and not feel guilty about what I didn't get done, because I know I'm getting as much done as I can. So that's like that piece of, teaching people how to be more productive so that they can do less. That's like super inspiring to me.
I am getting goosebumps over that idea. And because it's so interesting, because the conversation with Michelle Ward also kind of slid into this territory too, of like right sizing the effort. Because I think especially in these first couple years of like trying to build something up, like there's that all the time thing. Like you literally could work all the time and you don't have an hour, a clock to punch, so to speak, even if you're you used to be salaried. Like, but there was a number of hours and then you would leave and it was done. But,
working at Apple, it always sort of felt like I could just work forever and I'd never catch up. I think a lot of tech companies are like that.
That's
that's a whole other topic.
That's a new conversation we could have about how to kind of escape that mentality. But there really is that thing where it's really hard, and especially with a child, to be present for one thing, your business, and then present, which is what you really want to do, and what I really want to do is for my son as well, because I don't want him to be like, mommy is always on the computer. But it is cute that he'll say mommy is a podcaster. He doesn't know what else I do. But that's my job title for him. I love it.
Yeah, my daughter thinks I'm a librarian because I work in her school 1 day a week.
I love
which
that.
I totally love, even though I have no training as a librarian. I'm not at all a librarian.
That's the best. I think we all need to make, I don't know, this would be a funny little practice, like business cards of what our kids or somebody else, like our favorite title we've ever been given, and just put that up somewhere. I'd be like, that's right. I'm a librarian. You just asked my daughter.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. So what else is going on in your business? Do you want to talk about your podcast a little bit? Because I know if anybody ever asked me, I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk podcast.
Yeah. So let me tell you, there's a couple things going on. So one thing is the first thing I wanted to talk about is that one of the things I'm embracing as I'm thinking about these more strategic ways that I can help people is that I've actually just launched a really tiny little package that I'm excited about, which is it's called Get Unstuck. And so it's really for anyone that's unstuck, but the way who's stuck. But the way I wrote the copy is that it's for mama creative entrepreneurs who are in a place where maybe life threw a curveball at them. So I've heard from a lot of women who like just had a baby, or, you know, they just moved to a new city and their business and life balance was going kind of okay. It wasn't ever perfect, but it was kind of going okay. And then they had this change and now they're just like, oh my God, I can't handle it. And they think they have to quit. And so they're at their place where like, I might have to quit my business and I don't want to quit my business and I don't know how to handle it. So this little package is like 90 minutes of coaching just to get through that unstuck part and get you back on the path of being, you know, kind of knowing what your plan is and your priorities are. So I'm really excited about that. So that's one thing.
And I think I see your project management. I mean, hi friends, I'm also a project manager. So I see project management like a really strong offering in that, because part of it's like, what can you, I'm just talking about this, like, but I could be really excited about what can you compartmentalize as like just specifically things to do. And then how do you set aside time to work on your own self and feel good about what else is going on? Because really a move or lots of life's curveballs, I mean, they are not strictly a project, but there's a way to kind of work through them. A move is a project. I mean, let's
absolutely. Yeah. And having a baby is a project. Yeah. But in that place of being stuck, you know, I mean, that's one specific way it might come up for people, but that idea of being stuck in a decision, you know, maybe it's the decision whether to have the baby or not, or maybe it's the decision whether to move or not.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the decision about whether to keep the business or not. So, you know, that for one client, that was actually the thing that she needed help with, you know, like, how do I decide whether I keep this or not?
That's juicy to have like somebody hold space for you in that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, she came out the other side feeling really peaceful about her decision. So yeah, so I'm really excited about that because I love helping people get unstuck. It's one of my favorite things to do. And then I'm also working on another similar kind of package that's going to be really around helping people get on top of their to-do list. You know, for those of you who have that to-do list that's never ending and you can't get it done, and you know that I can help with that. So I haven't written that package yet, but you know, if people listening to this and that appeals to them, I can help with that. So get in touch. So yeah, those are the big things happening in my business. The coaching part of the business. And then of course I have this podcast, which I love doing. So as you said, it's called Nurturing Habit. And it's a bi-weekly podcast because like I said, I work 15 hours a week and a weekly podcast is not in the cards for my life. And it's, I run it in seasons. So I do topical seasons, which has been really, really fun for me. And I just want to talk about that for a second because
yes, please do. I love how you organize it. Cause I think, I mean, let's underline that for a second. Like, I think a lot of people, they get into the story of this is how a podcast should look. And by that, I would say like kind of the standard, people get really hung up on that. I mean, that's kind of one of the things we go through in class, but like that you, or not you specifically, but that people feel like it's got to be a weekly one, you know. This is my story, in fact. I thought it had to be weekly. I thought it had to go for a full year, which was a season, which is, I keep doing it, but it is, insane. And like, I don't know, there's like, you see maybe somebody else, because I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but you see how they're doing it. But like, I could say that like the John Lee Dumas option is not for me. I think he's a daily show, and that's, oh my God. That would not work at all.
Well, and he probably has a lot of help. I mean, yeah, that's the difference.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, you know, when you're a DIY podcaster, that really limits what you can do.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great point too. I mean, Martha Stewart is no longer as in vogue as maybe she once was, but she has a team. Like, she's not coming up with those crafts on her own.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I was thinking a lot about how podcasting is different for different people this morning because, Danielle Laporte has a new podcast and
Yes.
she posted a story this morning. I follow her on Instagram. She posted a story this morning about how she was recording her last episode and she walked you into the building, and she has a team and she's in a professional recording studio.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone else is doing the audio mixing for her, and therefore somebody else is, I'm sure, doing all the editing and processing and
Totally, yeah.
copy. And all she's doing is showing up with her voice, which is awesome. Her voice and her heart are absolutely the value in that podcast, but she is not doing the rest of it. And therefore her podcast looks different than the rest of us who are doing the rest of it.
I love that you're underlining that part because I think, and it's hard once you're even in the game, like for me, at least, almost 3 years in, it is a total rush when my show shows up on top 200 under personal journals because it's sitting next to someone like her.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap. I mean,
Yeah.
Here, I will take a selfie right now. I will post this. Okay. You will see what this magic looks like. Hi, I'm in a dirty kitchen. There was a dog here. Here, let's take a picture of him. And that's the team. There
Right.
it is.
Right.
There's
yeah.
no.
And I have posted
curtain.
pictures of my recording situation several times on Instagram. And, sometimes I'm sitting in the back bedroom, which is / the room where I put everything I don't know what to do with, or I haven't taken a Goodwill yet. So, my recording studio is me sitting on the floor in front of the futon couch, piled up with, the clothes I'm going to donate and the leftover, the extra stuffies and the, whatever. It's not professional, but it works.
It is, well, and I think that's one of the things that's so exciting. I mean, I say what I say, but then you and I are both, these shows are on, well, now called Apple Podcasts, but we're in the mix with the rest of them. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I don't know another medium that allows you to do this. So that's one of I love it. Yes. So I love it. But tell us how you decided, or I don't know, what of your first 2 seasons, I already know the answers, but what are your first 2 seasons about? And how did you narrow yourself? How did you say, yeah, that's it, that I want to open up with? Because, okay, just talk about your first season, because you went bold on a first season.
I went bold. Yeah. So my first season was about grief, about nurturing ourselves in grief. And I thought that my whole podcast was going to be about grief. I just thought it was going to be on the topic of nurturing and grief. So I took your podcast classes. That's where this process happened. And I remember being on a call with you, coming into it going, yeah, my podcast is going to be about grief. And, and you had said in that week's lesson, the PDF for that week was I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it was basically, don't pick a topic that you can't just talk about for a year or years, you have to be able to talk about it for a long time. And even though that topic felt super urgent for me, I knew I wasn't going to want to talk about it for years. But I was really stuck about what else I wanted to talk about. And something clicked in that phone call and I think another student in the class was talking when it clicked for me. I was like, oh, that could be a season. And then I could talk about nurturing ourselves in all these other ways. And so I started brainstorming. Well, I'm sorry to the other student, but I was probably totally not listening because I started brainstorming. But I now have 6 years worth of topics of different seasons. So, I could do this as long as I want to. And I'm sure I could circle back to some of those topics again 5 years from now because I'll have different thoughts about them. So my first season was about grief, and the current season's about self-care. And then I have future topics about nurturing yourself in your business and nurturing your health and nurturing yourself as a mother. And I don't have the list in front of me, but it goes on and on. But I did make a strategic decision to start with grief. And that was a really interesting decision for me because, and I want to say both because I am sort of a quiet voiced, don't put myself out there kind of person in a lot of ways. I mean, I have strong opinions, but I mostly have strong opinions with people I know well.
I love that. And I love that you know that about yourself, that like it is, maybe, can I say, it feels a little bit more vulnerable to you to like start voicing things that, well, I mean, grief is a tough topic.
It's a tough topic. Yeah. And I started there because I felt like this, if I was going to do this, if I was going to do a podcast and create a space to have these conversations, I wanted it to be really clear that I was going to be talking about real stuff and I wasn't going to shirk the topic.
Yeah.
And also grief was really present in my life right then. I had come through cancer treatment. I had breast cancer a few years ago. I had lost my father not that long ago. My father died of cancer at the same time I was in treatment for cancer.
Yeah.
My relationship had gotten really impacted by all of those things, and we were living separately for quite some time. So I was in it, I was in that topic. So, on one hand, I tackled that topic because I needed to talk about it. I needed, and that was how the idea for the podcast started, was like, I want to call people who can give me some good advice on this topic. I want to learn some stuff about it. Oh, I could record it and then make it a podcast.
Well, and it's beautiful. I mean, I love that aspect of it, I mean, you do get to talk about things with fun people or experts on things, like whatever it is for you, but like how brave and how vulnerable and how amazing for you to walk right into the space. Like, wow.
Yeah. And it was hard. I mean, and I definitely had a vulnerability hangover for the first few episodes. Like, oh my gosh, I am talking about people dying on the internet. And I'm hoping people will listen to me and love the podcast. But the thing is that people have loved the podcast. And I think especially that episode, I'm sorry, that season, I mean, I get great feedback all the time on the podcast now, the self-care topics that I'm talking about now, but it's not touching people in the way that first series touched people, where people would send me messages and say, I just lost my mom and this episode really spoke to me. I thank you so much for doing it. And I was like, just one of those would have been enough to make it worth it for me. And I got a bunch of those people.
Wow.
This really made a difference for me. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Well, and that's gorgeous. I mean, and that's the other really cool thing I think about podcasting is it's so, and an interesting choice with grief as well. It's like, it's so personal. Like, I'm just gonna say, hey, Nicole, I had a coworker come over to me and Nicole and say like, hey, I'm a listener. And I'm like, I feel, like, and I like listening. And we had the conversation, this is where that's leading, of like, yeah. And I know that it is being a listener to other shows. Like, I feel like I know Just Lively really well. And I feel like I also participate in conversations in my own head probably, but like about really deep topics because these people are in my car or they're, I'm out gardening and listening. Like, these are just moments for me, but yet there's somebody else in it. So I think I could see where the grief conversation, there's something about it. Like, I was one of your guests for that season. Yeah. I definitely, when I was still kind of trying to unpack, coachy word, but like trying to figure out what the hell was going on for myself, like having a discrete way of exploring a topic as deep as grief would have been a balm, right? Like, there's something really interesting about jumping in with it because you don't have to actively participate too much, but oh my gosh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went into that series, my very first episode, like, I really felt like I had to explain why I was doing this. I didn't want to just jump in cold. So in my very first episode, if people want to listen to that, I really talked about my story, why this topic and why was it so important to me and how had I got to there. And I told my whole story, I had miscarriages and I won't tell the whole story right now because I'm not going to do it justice. But anyway, bad stuff happened. And I was sad. That's the Cliff Notes version. Really hard stuff happened and I was sad. And it was really, like when I wrote it all out, because I script my solo episodes, I wrote it all out and I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm just asking for sympathy or I don't know, and that wasn't why I was telling the story. And I say that in that episode that I'm not telling the story because I want you to feel sorry for me. I'm telling you the story because this is just where I am right now. And sometimes we get to a place where we've been through a really hard period in life and we're still moving, we're okay.
Yeah.
But it's marked us. It's marked us in a really deep way. And so how do you learn to carry that new thing and not, I don't know how to describe it, like how do you let that scar heal in a way that's not disfiguring? I guess that's the metaphor I'll use. Like, you have a new scar, but you can move through it, you can do the therapy, whatever, and have a life that honors that, but isn't defined by it. And so that was the process I was going through. And that was why I wanted to talk with all those people, was to kind of learn those skills and share them, for other people who have walked through really hard things, and hopefully not as many hard things all at once like I did, because that shouldn't happen to anybody. But we all have them. Someone we love dies, or we lose a baby, or we get cancer. Stuff happens. Yeah. And we're not taught those skills of resilience.
No, we really are not.
So I wanted to gather all that stuff together so that when people need some resilience training, here's a place to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the breadth, but also like the depth of that topic. Just, yeah. So, I mean, and your beauty in holding space for it and talking about it, like that was just inspired. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
Oh yeah. Let's see. So, I mean, because I get the sense maybe we just need to have another full conversation about podcasting. Because I'm like, I won't keep talking about that. But back to the Friendpreneur content.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back and talk about podcasts more.
Oh yeah, let's do that. I think that's fun.
I can geek out about that a lot.
You've talked a little bit about your edge, like where your growth is, but where do you see yourself? Because clearly you are comfortable with jumping in and pushing yourself to those places that are like, ooh, that seems juicy and yet kind of terrifying. So what are you playing with right now?
Yeah. So right now, the thing for me is getting more in front of people in person, and also just getting more visible with my business and, who I want to coach and how I want to coach them. And yeah, there's this piece, we talked about this a little bit before the recording started, but this piece of when you're a personal coach, it's different. It's harder to market. It's harder to explain to people what the benefit is that you can give them. And, we know as coaches, like we know how useful it is, but for people who've never done it before, they don't necessarily understand that. So just being able to talk about my business in a way that appeals to people and also feels authentic to me, like I don't want to fall back to, the 5 great things you're going to get from coaching.
Yeah.
But also, how do I talk about it in a way that's going to tell someone that, that's really going to help them in their life?
Mm-hmm.
So, just exploring and experimenting with that. And then also trying to do more stuff in person. So, and this is a big edge for me. I am an introvert. I really like being alone. I do not like public speaking. I have been told I'm fairly good at it, but I really dislike it.
Yeah.
I do not want to go to networking events. Plus the whole, like, how do I talk about my business issue comes up. So I'm really trying to explore how to do that, like how to connect with people in person. And I've really noticed too that the people that have worked with me, most of them have known me in some capacity for a while. And so I'm recognizing that there's this piece of, especially I think for the kind of work I had been doing, I think the current focus is a little bit less deeply personal, but some of the coaching work I was doing before was so deeply personal that, people would not have wanted to do that with someone that they didn't know.
Right.
And the fact that they knew me, they met me at a retreat, or they were in a class with me once, or, we've been friends on Facebook for 5 years, like that made a difference. And so just noticing that the people that, and I loved working with those people because, like we were talking about with my podcast, that I like to go deep. I think it's awesome. And I can hold space for other people to do that and feel really safe and supported. But they kind of need to know me and trust me. And that takes a while. And it takes actually getting to know me in person sometimes. And so how do I get out of my cozy little home office so that people can get to know me? And I really haven't, and I'm saying all that while also admitting that I really haven't cracked that nut yet. I don't quite know how to do that. And, and people say, oh, like just plan some talks. And yeah.
You're like, yeah.
Yeah, except what? What do I talk about? And where do I go?
And I've been in the same
also,
space.
how do I schedule it? Because I don't have very much work time. I work around my job.
Yeah, sorry, I'm totally jumping the bit to jump in on that too, because I love the question. I think it's especially those audience folk who are coaching or, well, I think especially coaching, like it's one of those really hard things. I love that you've kind of called out it's hard to explain, and it's easy to fall back on, like you said, like the top 5 things coaching will do for you. I mean, because they're all true and they're authentic, and we are being truthful in saying them. But then there is something very deep and personal about it. I've found most of my clients have also come from a place of they know me or know somebody I know, and they know they can trust me before they even walk into the conversation. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those easier said than done things when somebody's like, well, just schedule a meetup. And you're like, do what? Like, it's a weird space.
Yeah.
And it is a tough nut to crack, as you said.
Yeah. And, of course, the thing that we do when we're like, I don't know how to market my business, you go on the internet and you find a marketing class. And, so there's there's a whole long topic there about trusting yourself in your own style. But, I have taken some marketing classes, and I think marketing is actually kind of interesting. I sort of geek out about marketing, but it's easy it's easier when you have, say, a business coaching or a health coaching model. You can say the benefits of this work are whatever. You're going to, reduce your gas and bloating. If you're a health coach, you're going to understand exactly what foods to eat to reach your, weight goals. Or a business coach, I will help you write your homepage. Like that's really measurable. Like to go back to the
tangible. Yeah.
It's totally, it's tangible. It's measurable, where my work is like, maybe the tangible parts are maybe I can help you get your to-do list down to something that you can actually tackle in one day. So that's a fairly, strategic and clear, tangible goal. But also the real thing that I'm working with you on is giving you permission to know what you want and don't want to do in your business. And I'm giving you permission to be away from your kid for 4 hours a day. And, that's just harder to talk about. Yeah. And people don't know they need it until they have it. That's the other thing. It's like, they're not Googling, I need permission to be away from my child.
Yeah. I need time for myself. I mean, they might Google that, but then, it is one of those kind of nebulous thing that's hard to describe. But I mean, I'm in full agreement with you that like now that I have been through coach training and been coached quite a bit, like I know myself better than I ever did before, and I feel more comfortable making decisions and giving myself permission to do things. And maybe that right there is our marketing copy, but because it's the things that are the result of, but it's still hard to communicate to somebody who is like, but why would I pay money? Like, why would I engage someone to do that when I don't know them? Yeah. It's a weird, it is a really circular thing.
And marketing's really all about talking to your ideal clients' struggles. And so that's where my Get Unstuck package came from originally, because I looked back at all my notes of all the people I had talked to in the last, year. And most of them said, I'm stuck on X, I'm stuck on Y, I'm stuck on Z. And I was like, well, I helped them all get unstuck. So love your target right there. People feel stuck sometimes.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and you said it's 90 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
90 minutes and then a follow-up. So it's like a over a 2-week program.
that is so awesome. Because yeah, really, I mean, you and I can both vouch for the fact that you can really get through
Oh
some
my gosh. Yeah.
territory.
90 minutes is awesome. I mean, I had one client who just had a 30-minute call with me and she got unstuck on something super major. And she was probably ready. I mean, she came to me like ready to make that decision and she just needed someone to hold the space
Yeah.
to hear her talk it out. But, you know, in 90 minutes, oh my gosh, you can do so much.
You can't. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that package. Well, let's talk about, so what danger zone here for project managers,
Yeah.
but what tools, books, fun things have you been like playing with to either simplify or bring more joy to your life and business?
Yeah, so I'm totally going to go the project manager.
I love it.
Because what has been really getting me excited lately, honestly, has been like putting together a custom planner for myself that totally fits my life exactly the way I want it to.
Mhm.
Using fun notebooks to keep track of, you know, all my various inputs and plans and ideas. And figuring out how to use Asana, which is a project management online tool, if you don't know what it is. Although recently some people have been talking about Trello, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should check out Trello, but I'm trying not to get distracted. I just want to use one tool. So yeah, so that's been what's really been exciting for me. And, you know, and I tried bullet journaling, you know, on the planner front. So I tried bullet journaling. I used to use the Get to Work book, which if you guys don't know the Get to Work book, it's very cool. It's, what is her name? Elise. Wasn't she on your show recently? Elise Blaha. Maybe I think it was somebody else.
Yeah, no, she hasn't been on, but I will contact her immediately.
Get in touch with her. She's cool. She's really fun. So she designed this really awesome day planner called the Get to Work book. And she's all about getting your stuff done. Like she is a get it doneer, which I love. But it's big. It's really big. And I couldn't carry it out of my bag. So I had this like, I love this planner, but it's too big. So I discovered that she sells a version of her planner in an A5 size that's unbound. So I found covers that fit it. And then I designed some of my own pages. And now I'm all like in InDesign. And so I'm making a new freebie for my site that's going to be a planner page. I'm like super excited about like, now I might plan my own planner, I might create my own planner. Yeah, so that's what's getting me really juiced right now. I feel so geeky talking about this.
Oh, no. Oh, so I use a Blue Sky planner, that sweetest thing ever. My son bought me for Christmas.
Oh.
I mean, I may have pointed it out for him, but like, I love that it has multiple areas. Like it has a to-do, it has call, email, and it has errands and then notes, and then each thing for like a different day. But I'm so visual. I have to have a month at a glance with the little boxes, or there's no other way for me to really like juggle a podcast and other things if I can't see what I'm doing in a day. So I think it's so deeply personal, but I think when you find a planner that works, it's like it's so awesome and can totally light you up. So I love that you're sharing some of your stuff, because I think it's neat to see how other people do it, because there's better ways for sure than what I'm doing.
Yeah. And, you know, back to that whole idea about productivity for me being about doing less. So this planner page that I'm designing has a place on it. So it has a schedule on one side, and then it has a top 3, because I find that to be really important, is to, like, what are your top 3 priorities, your top 3 tasks for the day? And then it has a to-do list. And then it has a place for what you're going to not do. Because I think that's a really interesting piece of what we need to think about in planning our day, is what are we going to let go of? Like, what are we just going to not worry about today?
Yes.
So I've got a little spot for that. And
that seems so zen. Like, I'm just letting this shit go, because I know where my brain's already going to go on that. Like, you kind of have to know your process, but that's brilliant.
Yeah. And then there's a little spot for what your self-care is going to be, because we don't put that shit on our to-do list. And we should.
But we should.
But we should. So I've got a little spot for that. So it's kind of an experiment, you know, it's sort of based on what works for me. And I'm curious to see what people think of it. Hopefully it'll be live by the time this podcast goes out, so people can check it out and let me know, because I'd love
I'm going to link it up.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. I think that sounds inspired and helpful.
Yeah. And so now that I've done one, you know, now that I've conquered InDesign enough to do the planner page, I have lots of ideas. Like, oh,
you're like, ooh, I got the bug. and see how that project management is coming back. Like, you kind of have to know yourself. You have to know how people think and how to plan things. Like, yes, it all comes back, friends. I think that's one of the big things. Like, and I think, so I'll have to link this one too. I keep talking about Natalie Ekdahl right today, but like she has an episode with one of her PR people that's going to speak at her big conference, but she's talking about how all the stuff that she did, and she was like, I never want to do any of that again. And then she's like, guess what I'm doing right now? Like, just, it's the new version. And she was in PR and publicity. And like, she was talking about how now that's the thing that she keeps going back to, but she's done a spin on it that's like a little bit more. She also has a life coaching certification, and they talk about too how that is such a great skill set to have regardless of where you're at. So it was really kind of eye-opening for the journey where many of us are on in the friendpreneur space.
Yeah. Well, it is really interesting because, of course, I was a project manager because that's my natural skill set. I mean, I was a good project manager because, I'm organized and I like to break things down, and I, like, it's a fun puzzle to me, where other people are like, never would I do that. It does not sound fun at all.
Yeah, that sounds hellish.
I love to do that. Like, I used to joke that I organize my sock drawer for fun because I like to see them organized. It's a personality quirk.
My clothes, like,
right,
by color, because that's how it works.
Exactly.
I love this.
So just this whole idea of coming back to that piece, and the idea that I was so actively turning away from those parts of myself because I didn't want a certain kind of job anymore. Like, I feel so much more integrated now that I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of love that stuff.
Yes.
I'm going to embrace that again.
Yeah. Well, and the part where we do turn it away because there's an aspect of whatever it was that we didn't like.
Yeah.
But then how do you kind of reinvent yourself around that piece and use it? Because it is your superpower.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like a core thing that you're just really good at, and it comes so natural. But how do you make it something you love doing instead of you're like, oh, I got to go in. That boss is going to stare at me weird and I'm late because I have a kid. Like, that's my inner critic. We just tapped into her, but
Yeah. And for me, that piece, that little magical piece, was that realization that my whole deal around productivity is to make more room rather than to do more in the room. It's to actually do less, like make room and then do less with it.
I'm writing that one down. Wow. Okay. So let's jump into, is there a final tidbit of inspiration or joy you would like to share with our other friendpreneurs out there?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about this question before we got on the line, and I've got like 4 things. So
lay them on us. We need 4 things.
Yeah. So let's see. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was this idea of looking at your past to see where you're going. So this is part of where I got to my real clarity about who I want to work with, was that I looked back at the people I loved working with and what were the commonalities around them. But it also applies to this piece about the project management. Like, what did I used to be really good at? What did I used to really enjoy doing? Oh yeah, I like organizing. I like, taking pieces, taking projects apart and making them really easy to accomplish.
Yes.
And then be really specific. So, for people who are trying to build their business or are feeling maybe uninspired in their business, this may be a process that can really get you back into alignment with what you really enjoy, because who's got time for a business that's not what they enjoy, right? And maybe that means you have to shift your business a bit, or maybe that means you have to shift your target market a bit, but that's okay. You can do that. We're all allowed. And then the next tidbit is about getting help. And that may mean hiring a coach. That might mean, a business coach. It might mean hiring a personal coach if you've got, if you're stuck about how to earn more money, or, if you need mindset help, like, that could be a personal coach or a business coach. And one of the things that I did when I was doing that process of looking back at the clients I loved working with is I actually just hired someone to sort of talk that out with me.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe I could have done it by myself. It might have taken longer, but having someone just like taking notes, like listening to me and taking notes and saying what I heard you say was, made
Mirroring.
it go so, yeah, just doing basic mirroring. That made that process go so fast. And I came out of that session, I just did one session, and I came out of that session with, I know exactly who I want to work with now.
Yes.
Got it.
Well,
You know?
and it's so interesting. I'm going to jump in if you don't mind, but like,
No, go ahead.
especially as like external processors. So if I think I made this term up as well, but like if you're the kind of person that like you find yourself, and women are more likely to be this way than men, but like if you find yourself like, I wish I could talk through this, or you know, one of your greatest joys is talking something through with a girlfriend or a friend, whatever. Like if you're that person, then yeah, do yourself the favor and make a small investment of just chat it out with somebody. Because a good person can mirror it back to you and say, this is what I hear you saying. Is that right? And that's just like the biggest gift.
Yeah. And absolutely, you could, you might have a friend who's really good at, I have a friend who's really good at that. But if you don't have a friend, you can hire a friend.
Oh, easily. Well, and it's,
yeah.
And that is, a coach loves to, well, I love to do that. You love to do that. So
yeah. And then actually I only have 3. I thought I had 4. So 3, the third one is about building structure. And so I know this is kind of a hard sell for those of us who don't have this weird sock organizing gene.
Or as Fly Lady calls it, you're not born organized.
Exactly.
I love that term so much. Yeah.
But let me talk about why it's important, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, because it's part of that piece of creating more time to do less with. And it makes all your decisions easier. And decision fatigue is a thing. And when we have decision fatigue in our business, I think it bleeds over into our personal life. So for me, when I'm feeling really overwhelmed with my business and I don't know what to do, and I feel like I'm, just spinning my wheels, I'm frustrated with my daughter and my house is a mess, so like it bleeds into the rest of my life. So there's the idea of building structure in your business is to give you space. So, and by structure, I mean, know for sure really clearly who you're working with, because then it's really easy to write to that person. If you're creating content or talk to that person or market to that person, you have way less decisions to make. And then the structure of knowing what what are the priority of things that you need to do in your business? So instead of spending a little bit of time doing this project and a little bit of time doing that project, what's the most important thing and you can work on it till it's done.
Yes.
And, I recognize I work with a lot of creative people, and I'm a creative person too. I'm an artist as well as isn't that a weird combination?
It's a unique skill set. Artist. Yeah. But I think some people and maybe that's where the Fly Lady piece of like being born organized, that skill set can show up in any combination, but I think it is unusual if you're more left brain oriented. Yeah.
Right. And so, but this applies for left brain people too, even though I know there is a lot of resistance for people, especially who are really attached to that left brain identity. I'm an artist, I'm a whatever, I can't organize. Well, you can learn that skill. It's just a skill. Even if you're not born organized, you can learn how to do it better than you do now.
Yeah.
And it gives you freedom. And that's why I think it's important. It gives you the freedom to do what you want to do. Instead of just spinning your wheels all the time, which is just exhausting. So
it is. Yeah. Yes. This is going to be in my head for a long time about the create structure to create more space.
Yeah.
Oh, Doña, I'm so glad you were on. Thank you.
Of course. So happy to be here.
Doña, thank you so much for joining me this week. It really is a treat to have you on, and I am so excited about your show and where you've taken it. If you guys want to find out more about Doña and her show, you can find all the links to her site and her podcast at jumpstartyourjoy.com/Doña, Dona is how she spells her first name. And be sure and check out Doña's podcast, which is called Nurturing Habit. You can also find that in any of the regular podcasting apps. Next week on the show, I am going to be doing a solo cast on the 4 tenets of joy that I really see have bubbled up for me as kind of the pillars of what this show has been about over the last 3 years, and the things that really draw me in from a joy perspective. So the 4 things are playfulness, inspiration, mindset or coaching, which I kind of lump in the same thing together, and then taking action or actionable steps that you can take towards the thing that brings you joy. And so I really want to unpack those. There's been several really fundamental interviews and learnings over just even the last 3 months. I haven't had the chance yet to really unpack with you guys. So I'm really excited about talking them in a little more detail in next week's show. I can't believe we're at episode 140, and I hope you'll come back for that. And until then, I hope that your days are filled with so much joy.